What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a typical morning show interview, only to find himself in a tense exchange with a host seemingly intent on challenging his legacy? What follows is one of the most charged moments in daytime television history, where politeness dissolves and real personalities emerge. Before millions of viewers, this is the untold account of how a legendary actor was pushed to his limit by a co-host more interested in provoking controversy than having a genuine conversation. Subscribe and leave a comment, because this moment will make you rethink everything. You thought you knew about morning television? The familiar glow of studio lights bathed the iconic set of The View as Harrison Ford took his seat, adjusting his jacket with the ease of a man who's done countless interviews throughout his decades-long career. The day had begun like any other promotional event. His publicist had prepped him on standard questions about his latest movie, and Ford had prepared himself for the usual lighthearted chat about his iconic roles and upcoming work. Whoopi Goldberg sat across from him, her expression unreadable. As the cameras rolled and the show's theme music faded, the audience clapped politely. But the tone in Whoopi's voice during her opening remarks immediately put Ford on edge. It wasn't the warm greeting he anticipated. It felt more like a direct challenge. "So Harrison," Whoopi began, leaning forward with unexpected seriousness, "I've got to ask something that's been on my mind for a while. You've built a career playing heroic character symbols of American strength and virtue. But I wonder, is that just acting, or do you genuinely believe in those ideals?" Ford raised his eyebrows slightly, caught off guard. Morning show interviews usually opened with easy questions, family stories, project teasers, or amusing set anecdotes. This was something else. He briefly wondered if he'd missed a change in format. "Well, Whoopi," he replied with his usual calm and measured voice, "any actor worth their craft looks for something real in the characters they play. Whether it's Han Solo or Indiana Jones, you try to find the human truth behind the larger-than-life figure." Whoopi didn't back off. In fact, she leaned in more. Her tone grew sharper, causing some audience members to shift in their seats. But that's the thing, isn't it? You get to play the hero. You get to be the noble one. Meanwhile, the rest of us deal with the real-life consequences of the stories these films push. Don't you think there's something troubling about the constant portrayal of the white male savior? The question lingered in the air. Ford's jaw tensed slightly. He'd handled tough interviews before, but something about Whoopi's approach felt more pointed than professional. "I think that oversimplifies both the characters and the stories," Ford answered, keeping his tone even but firm. "These aren't just tales of white male heroism. They're about people facing extraordinary circumstances and trying to do what's right, regardless of the cost." Whoopi shook her head, dismissive. Ford noticed the other co-hosts were uncharacteristically silent, likely sensing the growing tension. "That's exactly the issue, Harrison. You don't have to see it, because it doesn't affect you. You've spent your career benefiting from a system that prioritizes certain narratives while pushing others aside." Ford, known for his patience, showed the first cracks in his composure. "I've tried to tell stories that connect with people. I've never claimed to be perfect, and not every film I've made is a masterpiece. But I've always approached my work with honesty and respect for the audience." "Respect?" Whoopi's voice rose slightly. There was now something more personal in her expression. "Is it respectful to take roles that reinforce damaging stereotypes? To profit from stories that support existing power structures while claiming you're just here to entertain?" That hit Ford hard. For the first time, his calm slipped. "I think you're confusing storytelling with activism, Whoopi. My job is to bring characters to life in a way that engages and moves people. If you want a serious conversation about the role of storytelling in culture, that's worth having. But let's not pretend every movie needs to be a political statement." Whoopi let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh, so now you're explaining the difference between entertainment and activism? That's rich coming from someone who's never had to think twice about representation. People who look like you have always been front and center." Ford's hands clenched slightly, his frustration becoming more visible. "I'm not trying to lecture you. I'm trying to have a respectful discussion about acting and storytelling." but it feels like you're more interested in turning this into a personal critique than a professional conversation. Critique? Whoopi said, feigning surprise. I'm asking fair questions about your career choices. If that's too much. For you, maybe you shouldn't be in the spotlight. Ford's response was sharp, his restraint thinning. I've been in the public eye for over 50 years. I've taken criticism from critics, fans, journalists, and peers. But I didn't expect to come here and be treated like a defendant in a courtroom. This feels less like an interview and more like an ambush. The studio was tense. Crew members exchanged uncertain looks. The audience sat in silence. Ambush? Whoopi repeated with disdain. You think asking questions is an ambush? That's the problem. You're so used to being treated gently that the moment someone challenges you, you claim foul play. Ford's voice deepened, commanding the room's attention. I didn't say anything about being treated unfairly. I came here expecting a real conversation about my work, not to be made a symbol of everything wrong with Hollywood. If you want to talk about the industry's shortcomings, fine. But don't single me out as the root of the problem. Whoopi leaned back, her posture colder now. Holding you accountable is not a personal attack. This is exactly what privilege looks like the moment you're questioned. You act like you're under siege. Ford's jaw tightened. Anyone who had worked with him would recognize this tone as a warning. I'm not claiming to be a victim, Whoopi. I just want to know why I was invited on the show. If your goal was to put me on trial for something I haven't done? Not done? Whoopi's voice climbed again, her expression indignant. What about propping up a system that shuts out people like me? What about occupying roles that could have gone to someone who knows what real struggle looks like? Ford sat up straighter, his voice rising for the first time, packed with long-contained frustration. You want to talk about struggle? I worked as a carpenter for years building cabinets and staircases to support my family while chasing acting. Roles that mostly went to others. I didn't have wealthy parents. I didn't have industry connections. I had to fight for every opportunity. Whoopi rolled her eyes, unimpressed. Spare me the bootstrap story. You think being a carpenter before making millions in Hollywood compares to systemic barriers faced by people like me? You got your break because you fit the mold Hollywood wanted. Right time, right face, right gender. Ford's control finally. Cracked lucky? You think a 40-year career built role by role is luck? You think the discipline, the physical toll, the research all of that is just privilege? You're too deep in your own legend to see what's obvious, Whoopi shot back. You've been told you're special for so long you believe it. But here's the truth. You're not special. You're just another actor who got ahead. Start because of your skin color and your gender. The words hung in the room like smoke. Ford went quiet, his voice low but icy. I came here with respect for you, this show, and everything you've accomplished. But I'm starting to see that respect is a one-way street today. Whoopi laughed bitterly. You want respect? Earn it. Stop writing on films from 30 years ago and do something with your platform that matters. Use it for change, not just paychecks. Ford stood abruptly. His chair rolled back with force, startling the crew. I don't need to sit here and listen to this, he said, his voice final. The interview, whether Whoopi liked it or not, was over. Oh, now you're walking out, she called after him, as he removed his mic. Perfect. Just what I expected. The moment someone calls out the great Harrison Ford. This is meant to be journalism, not theater. Whoopi stood as well, and the two now faced each other across the coffee table like opponents in a standoff. Don't question my professionalism, she said. I've been doing this long before. You started acting. I've earned the right to ask tough questions. Ford let out a short, bitter laugh. These aren't tough questions, Whoopi. A real interview would be asking about my choices as an actor, my collaborations with directors, or how the film industry has changed over the years. What you've been doing is throwing out accusations and expecting me to answer for things that exist only in your assumptions. The tension on set was palpable. Behind the cameras, producers signaled frantically, clearly trying to salvage the situation, but it was already past that point. Both Ford and Whoopi knew the damage was done. You know what your problem is, Harrison? Whoopi said, her tone shifting to a kind of condescending sympathy that cut deeper than her previous comments. You've lived in a bubble for so long. You can't handle being challenged. Can't take being questioned. maybe just maybe your success isn't entirely based on merit. Ford paused, holding her gaze. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but resolute. My mistake, Whoopi, was thinking I'd be having a real conversation with a professional. Instead, I walked into a setup by someone who's confused cruelty for courage. The words seemed to catch Whoopi off guard. For the first time during the exchange, she was visibly stunned. She opened her mouth as if to respond, but nothing came out. Silence filled the studio. Even the soft hum of the cameras seemed overwhelming. Ford calmly unhooked his microphone, his every movement deliberate, signaling he was finished. I've been in this business long enough to know the difference between hard-hitting journalism and performative theatrics. And this was the latter. Don't get to just walk away from this. Whoopi's voice cracked slightly, a mix of anger and what sounded like unease. You don't get to come on my show, get confronted about your privilege, and leave. Just because you didn't like the questions? Ford paused again, looking at her with a mix of disappointment and quiet contempt. I'm not walking away from difficult questions, Whoopi. I'm walking away from someone mistaking hostility for journalism. There's a difference between accountability and an ambush, and you crossed that line the moment I sat down. Ambush. Her voice trembled. I asked you fair questions about your career and its influence. If you can't deal with that kind of scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be doing press at all. He placed the mic gently on the coffee table between them. You didn't ask questions, Whoopi? You made allegations. You came in having already judged me guilty and spent the whole segment trying to extract a confession to something I didn't. The other hosts, who had been mostly silent until now, looked around nervously. One of them began to interject, but Whoopi silenced her with a sharp hand gesture. Don't question my integrity, she snapped. I've asked difficult questions on this show for years. I've gone toe-to-toe with presidents, CEOs, and public figures. Just because you can't handle it doesn't mean I'm out of line.
Hey, Ford.
Shook his head slowly, the look on his face almost sympathetic. Your right challenging authority is important. But there's a difference between criticizing someone's actions and launching personal attacks based on unfounded beliefs. Today, you weren't trying to challenge me. You were trying to tear me down. Tear you down? Whoopi laughed, though it sounded forced. All I did was ask you to reflect on your privilege. If that's too much for you, maybe you're not as strong as you think. It's not about discussing privilege, Ford replied, his tone calm but firm. It's about how you've conducted yourself. You came in with assumptions. You didn't try to understand who I am or what I believe. You tried to turn me into a villain for your own narrative. He began walking toward the edge of the set. Whoopi called out, her voice edged with desperation. So you're just going to leave? Prove my point about how you handle pressure. Ford turned back once more, his expression carrying the weight of decades in a challenging industry. I'm not walking away from pressure, Whoopi, I faced. Criticism, flops, and setbacks throughout my career. What I won't do is stay in a room where hostility is dressed up as journalism. Hostility, she exclaimed, nearly shouting.
Out.
I'm holding you accountable for your impact on Hollywood. How is that hostile? He studied her for a long moment before responding. Because true accountability comes from good faith. It involves a genuine interest in understanding and improving things. What I saw today wasn't accountability. It was retaliation for grievances that have nothing to do with me. The accusation lingered. Whoopi's face shifted from disbelief to anger and then to something closer to regret. How dare you, she said quietly, but without her earlier force. I dare because it's the truth, Ford replied. I don't know what I've done to earn your hostility. I don't know what grudge you're carrying. But I do know that today, I didn't deserve this. And neither did the viewers, who expected a conversation and got a public takedown instead. Walked off once more, Whoopi realizing he wouldn't. Return, threw out a final jab. This is exactly what I expected. The moment your worldview is challenged, you walk. That's the privilege I was talking about. At the edge of the set, Ford turned back. No, Whoopi. What you're seeing is something different. It's called dignity. It's knowing when a situation has become toxic and choosing not to stay in it. Dignity. Her voice now shook, and for the first time, Ford saw that she may have begun to understand the misstep. You call walking out dignity? I call it abandoning responsibility. I call it protecting my self-respect in the face of baseless hostility, Ford answered. I call it walking away from a conversation that was never meant to be a conversation. You confuse cruelty with courage. I won't be part of that. With that, he exited the set, leaving Whoopi standing alone before a silent studio and a stunned live audience. The quiet was broken only by the subtle hum of equipment and whispers among crew who had witnessed something destined to become television history. Whoopi stood still for several seconds, breathing heavily. When she finally spoke, her voice barely registered, but the microphones picked up every word. Well, she said, trying to compose herself, I guess that tells us everything we need to know about Harrison Ford's character. But even as she said it, something in her expression betrayed a deeper realization that she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. What should have been a straightforward promotional segment had become something else entirely. Not a discussion about Ford's career or his upcoming film, but a revealing moment about the interviewer herself. As cameras rolled and Whoopi awkwardly segued into a commercial break, her voice lacked its usual steadiness. She had sought a confrontation, and got it.
Ow.
But the aftermath felt empty, and the look in her eyes said it all. She was beginning to understand the real cost of what had happened. As the broadcast cut to commercial, one thing was certain: this interview would be remembered for years, just not for the reasons anyone expected when Harrison Ford first walked onto the set that morning. What did you think of this tense exchange? Have you ever seen a celebrity interview derail like this? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more surprising celebrity moments you won't find anywhere else. Ask ChatGPT.